listening to the Cricket Podcast.
I think it was a disgraceful performance, and I think it should never be permitted to happen again.
That is very good.
Hello and welcome to the Cricket Podcast. I'm hosting for once today. It's working. Come on. I'm joined by Jack Hope. Hello, Jack. How are you?
Oh, I'm so happy that it's worked. What the people don't know at home is that we spent 10 quite frantic minutes there trying to set it all up. Dan Weston in his RCB mask has patiently been watching on. He's got his dogs in action, so hopefully we'll see them later. Well done, Ross. Congratulations.
Thank you, it's an honour. Yeah, it's an honour. Finally a producer instead of a presenter. Dan, nice to have you on the show. You are looking beautiful as always with that mask on.
In my RCB face mask, Ross. I'm honoured to be part of your first ever show as a presenter, and I'm wondering if you're going to update your Twitter bio accordingly.
Well, what we'll have to do also on the guest notes is make sure that your dogs actually get credited with actually a performance in here. Well, it has been a super weekend, right? The dog definitely agrees. I mean, today's fixtures were far better than yesterday's fixtures. There was my boys, the Rajasthan Royals, getting beaten quite easily by Delhi Capitals. We had the dumpster fire of Punjab Kings versus Sunrisers Hyderabad. And then today was Super Sunday. I think actually it was far better than watching our beloved Spurs lose, Dan. So sitting there watching the IPL was far better. And I suppose, where should we start? Should we start from yesterday? Should we start from today?
I reckon let's go chronologically in reverse, because there'll be people just tuning in after a couple of pretty good Sunday fixtures. So let's do what we said would be game of the weekend first, and then go back through. Because as you say, Ross, let's be honest. If we start with the yesterday first, people will be tuning out. They'll be saying, "I don't want to relive that." So if we do the good stuff first, then the hardcore can stick with us for Sunrisers Punjab.
Yeah, okay. So Dan, your beloved RCB overcame the Mumbai Indians, and it's quite weird watching what I think is, and I think what we all agreed is one of the best all-time T20 franchises just capitulate in front of your eyes since the restart of the IPL.
It was. Well, congratulations to my boys who are reinforcing their playoff credentials with a resounding win, or improving their net run rate in the process, which took a real beating following their demolition by KKR a couple of days ago. What an implosion from Mumbai. 57 for naught just outside the power play. Didn't even double it. And,
that's mad, isn't it? When you think about it like that, 57. Full disclosure, I listened to a little bit of this on the bus. Guerrilla Cricket, Knuckles on the podcast quite regularly or semi-regularly was leading the coverage there. So I didn't watch it necessarily, or I didn't watch the first part of this. Got to 56 off the end of the 6-over power play. I was like, in this power play, what's Kohli doing? Why are you not bowling your spinners? It's Sharma and De Kock. You just saw 2 days ago KKR bottle them up, do exactly what, or literally show you what the game plan should be, which should be spin from both ends, do 4 out of your 6 power play overs should be spin, win the game. And I thought, 56 for none off the power play. Mumbai are going to walk this. It's just not a contest anymore, this match. But it was, and I thought it was some really good bowling overall, Ross, from Yuzi Chahal.
Yeah, I mean, it was Chahal versus Chahal today, wasn't it? Today? So the big Indian selection dilemma, and one came out on top of the other. But we can come on to kind of that bowling in a little bit. I think we just need to try to establish how important this game actually was. Dan, in the preamble, whilst I was sorting out the producer kind of bits, you kind of mentioned how this kind of solidifies RCB's position, but it puts Mumbai in a pretty perilous situation, right? That they have now lost. They must be pretty worried. They are in the scrap and they are on a downwards curve. They've got 3 or 4 of their best players from the previous IPL are woefully out of form. And they don't seem to have a bowling plan. Their bowling plan that they've been able to stick to for the last, 2 IPLs they've had to change. They're having to adapt. It's not going that well, is it?
No, it's certainly not. And I think that no one could foresee this happening at all. No one would ever have thought that Mumbai would go in to the UAE and lose their first 3 games. Go now 4-6. They're probably going to need to win all of their last 4 games, if not 3 resounding victories. And it's a massive problem for them. You look at their bowling, and they used Bumrah and Milne in reverse roles today, which seemed a bit weird. Milne didn't take the new ball with Bolt, and Bumrah did instead. And I don't know about that. I personally would think that Milne's a great sort of 2 power play, 2 death operator generally. Krunal Pandya was fairly economical, but he hasn't really come to the party at all so far. Hardik was used as a specialist batter at 7.
It was a specialist fielder today.
Well, yeah, true story that. Yeah, but it's just, it feels like they're not coherently going with the strategy that they've had, the template that they've had over the last 4 or 5 years. And also they've tended to have a bowler who can bat pretty well at 8, and they don't have that so much. I mean, Milne can certainly hold a bat, don't get me wrong, but he's not a Coulter-Nile or someone like that, someone who can actually...
A real legend of the game, like Coulter-Nile.
A decent lower order hitter, a bowling all-rounder, if you like. Big decisions they've got to make.
So on that bit, Dan, you mentioned that Bumrah and Milne had actually moved roles. I didn't mind the bowling Bumrah 1 over. I could have got behind them actually changing it up. He got the wicket, and then they should have been like, "Do you know what? You've done your job."
Yeah, and then backload him.
Yeah. I mean, I think Bumrah. We've talked about this before. He's one of the top defensive, if not the best defensive seamer in world cricket. In the, he's not necessarily he's not Deepak Chahar in that he's not going to like blow open an innings necessarily right up front for you. But at the death, he's really reliable. As a guy who goes for like 7 and over, and there's almost nobody who can do this. And so spend that gold-like resource, and it is on what is confusing cricket, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. And so let's talk about RCB's innings, because Dan, I mean, you must have enjoyed watching it. There was some unbelievable hitting from Glenn Maxwell. But there was a real ebb and flow in there. So sometimes it felt that they were ahead, then they were behind, then they were pegged back, and it was a great game to actually watch. And watching kind of Rohit Sharma try to move his bowlers around and kind of try and stem some of the runs, it was quite interesting. But what I found strange was Virat Kohli's approach. So I think you talked about on the show last week with Jack around how he's struggling against spin bowling. And you saw there was intent from the start, right? He was hitting at kind of 200 from the start. He looked like it was going to go reasonably well. And then he ends up petering out. And we've been told by everybody who watches this, who's a Virat Kohli stan, that he can go through the gears. He has that next level. Actually, he regressed, right? 52 off of 41 balls is not a good T20 innings. Especially his start, right?
No. Yeah, and he started pretty well. There was I think he was like striking about 150 off about 20 odd balls. And I was thinking to myself, well, this is where we go on the podcast and we talk about how the reason why we talk about him and be frustrated with him is because he can do this. And then he just started having no intent against spin again.
Yeah. It was literally just blocking it back. It was a straight bat kind of.
It's a really weird, just like statistical innings from Kohli. Like one in that he's faced 42 balls, started so strongly, and then faded to a strike rate of 121, which is, let's just call it what it is, pretty crap. But he hit 3 sixes. He's only hit 8 sixes the entire IPL, including today. So it's kind of like 1 step forward, 2 steps backwards. You know what I mean? We're not anti-Kohli on this show, and I think most of the people that listen kind of understand, as Dan was saying the other night, that the criticism comes from a point of view of it's an evidence-based criticism. Like what we're looking at here is a player who is in our minds, theoretically, someone who could be exceptional that is not playing exceptional innings on a particularly regular basis. It's just like looking at that line: 51 runs, 42 balls, 3 4s, 3 6s, 121 strike rate. There's so much fucking randomness in there. You sort of think traditional Kohli innings is 51 runs, 40 balls, 4 4s, 1 6, 121 strike rate, and it's all strike rotation. But the strike rotation just, sort of wasn't there today.
The dots, Jack. 18 dots and 42 balls.
Yeah. It's very un-Kohli. I mean, like, maybe he's transitioning. Maybe he's like I don't know. You probably had Pokemon when you were young, Ross. Maybe you did too, Dan. You get like those, like early in the game, you get those Pokemon they'd start as like a caterpillar, and they'd be pretty one-dimensional, yeah. And you'd be like, you can use the caterpillar, but it's no good. And then they turn into a cocoon and they'd be completely useless. And you just have to send them out there to get pounded to gain XP. And they turn into a butterfly. Hopefully, I'm thinking maybe this is the cocoon portion. The last couple of years has been the cocoon portion of Kohli's flowering as a cricketing T20 butterfly. Is there any credence to that theory, do you think, Ross?
Kohli equals Caterpie. Or is he? I think his name was like Heart. Is it? I can't even remember what the Pokemon was now. The second one.
No, it wasn't an easy pass. That I'm not gonna.
Yeah, thanks, mate. But that's the thing. He has the potential to be a Butterfree. Virat Kohli has the potential to be a Butterfree, is what we're saying, and he's just not delivering against that. Dan, let's talk about his batting partner, Virat.
Oh yeah.
So when you've got AB de Villiers, when you've got Tim David, when you've got Glenn Maxwell in that side, are they utilising that number 3 position as best as they can by playing Virat there? And I'm not saying Virat's innings was terrible, but I'm just thinking in terms of like their upside, are they getting their selection right here? So RCB did that classic thing where they'd lost a game and they pressed the panic button. And they were just like, we're going to go with a completely different approach here. Dropped Hasaranga, dropped Tim David, brought in Dan Christian, who bowled in the power play, and we've not talked about that yet. Went for 15 in the power play, unsurprisingly.
They won this game, by the way.
Yeah, I know.
It's a prime example of a team who did a lot of weird stuff wrong and then still won, because that can happen in cricket.
They're brilliant. They're brilliant to watch.
Opposition.
They're a team built in the mould of Prasis Krishna.
The high standard deviation team.
Yeah. So that number 3 position. Do we think that they could be better in that world?
So KS Barat. Be interesting to see, but I have a suspicion that this innings that he played today, 32 off 24 balls, 4 boundaries and 24 balls, is probably about his ceiling. In the IPL,
right?
And when you've got Maxwell, de Villiers, and in theory they should have Tim David coming in afterwards. Someone at number 3 who's got that ceiling using 24 balls, a fifth of your resources, probably isn't the best usage of your resources.
Yeah.
And de Villiers today came in with 25 balls left in the whole innings.
Yeah.
So that's not good use out of one of the best batters in the world.
This is madness.
Yeah.
This is literally madness.
What they should do is, because they've got Kohli, and no matter what anyone says, we know that whether he changes into a Butterfree or whatever it was, he's gonna be an anchor. No, he just plays an anchor role. We can discuss the rights and wrongs of it, and there's a lot more wrongs to it than there is rights, but he's gonna do that. If you've got Virat Kohli doing that, and you back down to like 9 with Harshal Patel, who's like actually like way better than most bowlers, you don't need another anchor. So you might as well just pick Azharuddin and just tend to go and tee off.
Well, and this was a bit. I was watching it. I just could not understand it, and I think we always talk about it. And you saw it in Mumbai Indians innings as well, where they sent in Krunal Pandya ahead of Hardik and ahead of Pollard, and it was a bit like you utilise your best resources, your best hitting resources when you have the opportunity to, right? And it just seemed like a very strange thing for them to be doing.
Oh, absolutely. Apparently, like in India, he's regarded as the best wicketkeeper in the country after Vridham Saha. So maybe they're just like, we want to get a really high skilled guy out there.
So
if you want to do that, though, don't leave him at number 3. I think we can all agree.
Question, guys. Okay, so I'll see if you know about this. Yeah, it's a bit of a debate. I've got the exact data, but I think there's a generally accepted ballpark figure here. Okay, on average, how many times in a 120 ball innings do you think a wicketkeeper has direct impact on a ball?
So what are you saying here? Like, how many times does the ball not hit the bat and get caught by the wicketkeeper, or are you talking about run?
Yeah, just anything that they're not the first fielder.
20, 15.
So they are the first fielder, sorry, I should say, yeah.
Yeah. So I reckon 15 times in an innings it ends up in the wicketkeeper's gloves. 20.
I reckon fewer than that in T20. 11.
The new producer's closer. It's about 7. It's about 7 or 8.
So there's 8 times in an innings where the ball misses the bat and the keeper has to catch it,
or they get caught behind or stumped or whatever.
Yeah. That's not direct action. So that's that's just another nail in the coffin of SK Virat, isn't there?
Yeah. There's not much credence to picking the best wicketkeeper in a T20 match. Now, if you've got someone like Rashid Khan or something like that, when maybe there's more scope to do so, but they don't.
Yeah. So they do end up. Can we just look? I am aware we've got a lot of RCB fans, and some of our biggest fans. Some of our biggest fans are RCB fans, and they're saying right now, like, one, why have you started the weekend show with a massive dig at Kohli? It's like, well, that's us. That's what we do. 2, Dan, you've been telling everyone why RCB are so good the last few weeks. What do we see here today that actually backs that up? Because they've won this game. They've beaten Mumbai Indians. Mumbai Indians, 6 months ago, or a year ago, after the end of the last IPL, we were saying this is one of the greatest ever T20 teams, if not the greatest ever T20 teams. They've beaten them here
easily.
In the end, pretty comfortably. What's the secret sauce?
Glenn Maxwell. So
well, that's the end of the podcast.
So the other day we talked about like those, if you get 20% of the time you get match-winning innings out of Glenn Maxwell, I think that you're doing all right, and people have unrealistic expectations for how many times someone like that is going to change a match. Well, he changed the match today. He hit 9 boundaries in 37 balls. That's 25% roughly boundaries. Struck it higher than anyone apart from Rohit Sharma, who faced any decent amount of balls in the match, and really accelerated towards the back end. And it was a great innings from Maxwell. And I think that if he hadn't have batted, and if De Villiers hadn't have got any facing more than 6 balls, they could have been looking at 140. And that 140 is a different chase for Mumbai than 165, where you have to go a bit harder, even if you lost a couple of wickets. So, and then obviously Chahal, and then latterly Harshal Patel with the ball as well, you would say. Chahal probably ripped the spine out of Mumbai a little bit more, and then Patel sort of feasted on the tail. But obviously that hat-trick was the game changer as well.
So some of Glenn Maxwell's shots today were disgusting. There was no. He is a better left-handed batsman, or better doing the cross hit than most normal people are with their predominant hand, right? And some of the shots he picked up, I think it was Bumrah, and he picked him up and put him over where third man would be, and launched him into the stratosphere. It was ridiculous. And
you've heard the story. I think I've told the story on this podcast before. Why he's so good with the switch hit, haven't I?
Maybe.
I've never.
Tell us again.
Yeah, but when he was a kid at school, he was so much better than everyone else right-handed. The teacher said that you're only allowed to bat if you bat left-handed. And so when he was a kid, like at his school, he used to play as a left-hander. Still the best apparently. But that was the way of making it like Glenn Maxwell can play with the rest of the children. Yeah. And so what you get, 15, 20 years later is a guy who can call on all this muscle memory and just like you say, flip the bat round or watch the ball out of the other side of his face, with his other eye, and hit one of the best players in the world into the stratosphere.
Well, let's talk as you said, RCB. It ended up being a really good win. Harshal Patel took a hat-trick.
By the way, we got a load of messages after on the last show we did, where we were talking about RCB, about how Glenn Maxwell was a bust, couldn't play in the UAE, is he a waste of money? And Dan said, if you're going to get one of these guys, what you're going to get is a guy who maybe 3-4 times across the whole of the IPL plays an innings that effectively wins you the match, or puts you in a really good position to win the match. Mm-hmm. What do we get today? 56 of 37. There's one other player in the whole contest who, and this is regardless of how many balls they face, by the way, who has a strike rate higher than that. This is I don't know what a win. I don't know if anyone's calculated the financial value of a win in the IPL. I would guess it's a reasonable amount. It's closed leagues. It's probably a little bit different to the Premier League or something like that, where payout changes wherever you finish, and there's a Champions League and so on. But I would imagine an IPL win is
worth over $1 million in the Premier League.
Yeah, so it's probably worth. It probably isn't that direct because there's no extra competition to qualify into, but it's probably worth a few crore. I reckon he's paid it back. Over this season, I think he could get 4 golden ducks to finish the season and completely blow the playoffs, assuming they make it, and that's why he's already justified the price. What were you going to say, Ross?
Well, I was just going to say that there's some other praise to go round, right? So first and foremost, I think Harshal Patel, the man can't stop taking wickets. Like, it's ridiculous. He's taken 4 today. He's just give him the purple cap now. Like, forget about Rabada, forget about Norkia or whatever overseas quick you want. Like, Harshal Patel is just, it's ridiculous. He's got this knack and he's got a confidence, and taking a hat-trick today, which wasn't a particularly bad hat-trick. I mean, Chahar getting out of the final ball was hilarious, but it was great. It was great, right?
100%. Yeah, it's an interesting one with that. I mean, like, how do you rate him? Because I'm still not 100% sure where I come down on the man who's the leading wicket taker in the IPL, but also went for 37 in and over.
Yeah.
It's
well,
out of 10, how good a player is he?
I think we are. Like in football, we witness generational talents in Cristiano Ronaldo and Lionel Messi. We have now
Harshal Patel.
Yeah, Harshal Patel, Shardul Thakur,
Prasad Krishna.
Yeah,
the Holy Trinity.
It's unbelievable. They just keep on delivering, and there is a bit around, and people can talk about whether it's Virat Kohli's captaincy, whether it's just Harshal Patel just having a good run of form, etc. But they are eking every single bit of ability out of Harshal Patel, and it's good to see, right? He absolutely did Pollard, and that is not an easy thing to do. But he bowled Pollard round his legs. It was embarrassing for Pollard. Sometimes you just got to go, well played, mate.
Yeah, it was an interesting innings in general. I thought this. And I preluded it a little bit earlier by talking about how Mumbai were 56 for none off 6 overs, and had banked the game to some extent. They were probably 80% favourite or 75% favourite at that point, and then they've managed to lose easily. And their scorecard is horrific. So I've got a question because, as I said, I watched some of this I listened to a lot of this on the radio. 43 off 28, 24 off 23. Quinton de Kock, not the most amazing innings, but Rohit Sharma was obviously going some more than he has in recent times. Why did no one else get above 10? Was the pitch really bad? Was the bowling really good? Did Kohli get it spot on? I mean, can you enlighten me? I was following the game, but you sometimes you need these visual cues, yeah. And I'm looking at this scorecard in front of me right now, and I'm thinking, how did that happen?
It was just a good performance at the end. I think there was just that bit where every single time it looked like something was getting away from it. Like, fair play to Kohli. Kohli changed something up, and they delivered, right? And I think there's also a bit here that Mumbai Indians are woefully out of touch. Like Suryakumar Yadav got out chasing a wide one, which was practically bowled off the pitch, and it went straight down third man's throat, or short third man's throat. Kishan threw away his wicket. Hardik Pandya threw away his wicket. Krunal Pandya is batting 2 places too high in this team. It just feels to me like Mumbai Indians have gone... we've got a game plan. We're so good. They had a bit of a wobble and they've panicked a little bit. And I think what they should do is kind of just go back to, like they say it, where they should bring Sam Allardyce in until the end of the season and go back to basics. and just kind of do that. Really, it's just a bit bit
Such
sad
a
to
good
see.
line. We're in the chat. By the way, for everyone watching on YouTube, please hit subscribe. We're on the road to 10,000 subscribers, and we stalled a little bit. So we could use your help. Also in the chat, we've got quite a lot of people who have obviously never listened to this podcast before, asking us why we're not talking about Owen Morgan. We're getting to that. There's a show order. Yeah, we're starting with it's going to be a little while. We're going to get to Owen Morgan because he deserves he deserves a bit of a reckoning. You know, we haven't done it this season so much, or we haven't done it in the second half of this season, but we will get to him. Keep the comments coming in, though. We do enjoy reading them.
Yeah, I do particularly like the ones that say we are giving Indian players shit because India smashed us in the Test series. We found it hilarious that India smashed us in the Test series, so go back and watch those shows. But we do very much welcome you.
Yeah. Because the good thing about if you watch a show that isn't live, we've managed to put the adverts in, so we actually make money from those.
Yeah.
Unlike these ones,
We make nothing. We make absolutely nothing. Anyway. Dan, I wanted to just get your opinion. So before we move on, because we've been speaking about this game for about half an hour, we've got 3 others to cover. Ishan Kishan.
In fairness, though, Ross, the last 2 we could basically write off.
Right.
No, we have to talk about Sunrisers again.
Dan, I wanted to ask your opinion. Ishan Kishan. Bit of a Jack. You called him. I think it was a busted flush in our WhatsApp group the other day. He's been a bit found out. What should I feel about Ishan Kishan, Dan? Because I loved the mullet. I loved the earrings. I loved him hitting the most sixes last season. I thought he was brilliant. And like the full golf swing he does on some of his slog sweeps is incredible. But he's not hitting the ball off the square now. Like, how should I feel, Dan?
Maybe it was like Samson when he not Sanji Samson, but the fairy story or whatever it was. I don't know what they're called him, but like they cut off his hair and he lost his strength. Maybe that's happened with Ishan Kishan's mullet. I don't know. I mean, you look at historical data and you see him, Padikkal, Rishabh Pant were the 3 guys who are like stand out as young players inside Mushtaq Ali Trophy. The thing is with young players, we saw it a bit with Pant in the past. Maybe we're seeing it slightly a bit with Padikkal at the moment as well. Their career goes like this, and then they have a little dip, and then they come back out of the other side and go.
For the benefit of the tape, Dan has just done an uphill, then a downhill, then an uphill.
Thanks, Superintendent Hastings.
There's been a lot of niche English references in this.
That was probably the number 1. Yeah.
Because you said that Mumbai Indians is Sam Allardyce and I'm wondering whether Harshal Patel could be the cricket equivalent of Michael Ricketts.
Maybe.
Maybe. For the benefit of our listeners who don't follow English soccer about 15 years ago, Michael Ricketts was this guy who had like this unbelievable season. Like he's Trevor Bolton, and he couldn't stop scoring goals. He even got capped for England, I think, at one point.
Yeah, he did. Yeah.
And then something happened to him, and basically it was just a one-season wonder. It was literally he barely scored a goal for the rest of his entire career after that. And it'll be interesting to see if Harshal Patel can maintain this over a longer period of time.
Mm-hmm. So what does this mean in terms of positions then, Jack? So in terms of the table, this leaves Mumbai in 7th, I think.
This is DEFCON 1 from Mumbai Indians' point of view. Like, look, table here. You know, we've got CSK. We're going to get to them. They play very well. DC 2nd. Only on net run rate. They started off the second half with a better net run rate, but CSK have been marching. RCB. We said this was a crunch match, and I think it's turned out to be that. RCB 6 and 4, 4 games to go. They're going to make the playoffs. They should make the playoffs. KKR, PBKS, RR, and then 10th. They played 10 games. 7th. 4 wins, 6 losses, minus 0.551 net run rate. The number 1 franchise in the IPL. Maybe the best put together T20 cricket team the world has seen, and that's like their performances over the last 2-3 seasons in the IPL they've transcended what international teams have been able to put together. They're a phenomenal side. 4 wins, 6 losses. I think they're not going to make the playoffs. They haven't got a very good net run rate. They've got PBKS. They could pick that up. The Kings of Comedy could definitely give them a gift on Tuesday night. Then they've got to play Delhi. Then they've got to play Rajasthan, who will definitely have something to play for. And then they finish with Sunrisers. So, there's a couple of freebies in theory in there. But they probably have to beat Rajasthan, who will be playing for their lives. And they probably have to beat Delhi, who, love it or loathe it this year, have been a better T20 cricket team, I think. So I don't know. I 100% predicted, well, on our prediction show, with Dan, with Max, I was fully behind Mumbai. I thought they'd dig themselves out of the minor hole they were in at half time. What were they, 4th? I don't know if I see it happening now.
The benefit of their only saving grace is that there's 2 teams at the top who are runaway leaders and a team at the bottom who are runaway losers. And so basically, if Sunrisers do them a favour tomorrow in El Clasico against Rajasthan, then there's going to be 4 teams, all with 4 wins and 6 losses. And one of them's going to have to qualify.
Fair. Well, let's talk about one of the other teams that have kind of come from nowhere, and that is KKR. They've got a bit of a resurgence. So we're going to leave RCB there. We're going to leave Virat Kohli there. If you are watching the video,
well played RCB. I mean, I don't know if we said that as fully as we should. I mean, there were some really good performances in there. Maxwell, not least, Harshal Patel did well, and Kohli's captaincy after I think fucking up. To be honest, the power play was good. It really brought him back into the game. Maybe that was the game plan in the first place.
And RCB also won the Battle of the Chars, didn't they? So Chahal came out on top of Chahal. So that's the important thing. Right, let's talk about KKR versus CSK, because actually this was a really good game. Like KKR are brilliant to watch again. Like out of nowhere, in a space of this 100-day gap or whatever there was, their resurgence with the bat and their approach has been great. And them winning the first 2 games to them added just drama to the IPL that always seems to be there. Whereas CSK are just kind of ruthlessly going about their business. You've got a bunch of experienced cricketers, the odd Gaikwad here and there, and it's just a fantastic
Even
game
he's
to watch.
quite experienced. He's like a mid-20s player now.
Yeah,
like any other team,
in the
he'd be like
context
one
of the
core.
game, though, isn't it? Like if you're an over 60s team, like someone who's 40 in your team is a youngster, right? So in this regard, when you've got
go on, Dave, run after the ball.
Yeah.
He's the sort of guy that like the commentators call young, and then they get inundated with text going, actually he's 25.
Yeah.
Like, this happens all the time.
So let's talk about this. Let's talk about this game. And KKR, I think they won the toss and decided to bat first. They'd won both times chasing, so this is something a little bit different. But they posted 170 odd, 174, I think it was. Like it was a good performance against this side, especially when 2 of CSK's bowlers went for 5 and 5.25 and over from their 4 overs each. Like it just shows you how bad Sam Curran was today, who went 4 overs, 0 for 54. But Dan, let's talk about the top of the order for KKR. Venki Iyer has been brilliant. He's a great pickup from them. Gill as well. I think they've got a good opening partnership there. It didn't really come off for them today, but I think it's a pretty solid base for the rest of the tournament for them. But I want to talk about Shubman Gill's running, because we say that KKR have changed their intent. He hasn't changed his intent running, though, has he? Since 2018, he's been run out 6 times in the IPL. That's the most of any player. That's unacceptable.
You know what I loved about it? Like the blame that he instantly imparted onto Venki Iyer. He was like, "No, that was your fault." It was like acting school 101. Sometimes you'll get given. I've not been to acting school, but I've heard this is what happens. They'll give you a task. They'll be like, "Ross, you hate Dan because Dan has banged your wife," and then you have to just fucking go with it, yeah?
I didn't realise I was married.
It was like Shubman Gill had run himself out, and then his acting coach had come on and be like, "You hate Venki Iyer because he just ran you out," and he had to just go with it. It was beautiful. It was what it was what cricket's all about. Is those unnecessary inter-team rivalries or frustrations that just bubble to the surface when you're watching along. Terrible running. That's the main message, though. Cut all the acting school bit out of that. We could make this podcast a lot shorter if we just said what we thought instead of coming up with weird metaphors.
Yeah.
Terrible running, and it's been such a good start to the second half of the IPL from these two. And we saw in the first half how, from Delhi's point of view, or if you look at Delhi Capitals, how a really, hot as shit opening partnership can prop up a batting lineup and make you look really good. And they've been doing this to throw a wicket away like that. It's unforgivable. That's just bad cricket.
Yeah, I agree. But what I agree with is that positivity it kind of sends out. Like having that strong top base actually gives the rest of the batting order a bit of confidence sometimes. What it can't explain, and this is what I'm guessing a lot of our Indian fans are about to like, Owen Morgan.
Oh God,
Dan, you messaged earlier on our Twitter saying around we need to talk about Owen Morgan. I'm just going to ask there: is Owen Morgan's inconsistency a problem for this KKR side?
It's not positive, is it? Hold on a minute. He's not inconsistent.
Is he just consistently bad?
Yes. So here's the thing, right? We talked about Virat Kohli the other day, and we talked about various players. This is not a personal thing. This is where we're talking about players, and we've got evidence, we've got data to prove that they're not justifying a place in the team. Now, I think it's fair to say that Morgan has also not justified his position in the England team of late as well. Now, if we're looking at his numbers this year, they are really not good. This year, in all T20s and the 100 in combined, he averages 13.5% boundaries almost, and just under 15 balls per dismissal. That is not good.
Can I translate that into old stats for people who deal in averages and
average of 18 and a bit, strike rate of just over 122.
Yeah. It's like I don't know. I was going to say Jacques Callis, but we actually looked this up, and his strike rate was 109 when he played in the IPL. He scored loads of runs, but it was incredibly slow.
Yeah, but that's when that's when the leave was a genuine shot at the IPL.
It's probably I mean, I think look, 120. If you're a sub 130 striking player, you're way below league average, especially if the only skill you bring to the game is batting.
But don't forget also that some of those matches in that subset of data also include matches which are played with 20 balls fewer. So it's even worse, where the standard strike rate is higher.
Yeah, I mean,
it's a real problem. It's a real problem for, I mean, as in quotes, I guess, England fans or people who would, if we were going to pick a team we want to win the World Cup, we're going to pick England. It's a big problem for England, and I think it's a big problem for KKR as well, that they've got a guy walking in at 4. Why was he walking in at 4? That's a good question. Coming out there, getting 8 or 14, and we're not surprised at all that that's what he achieved. We're not being like, oh well, he. If it had been 14 off 8, at least there'd be the kind of excuse that he went for it and he scored some runs. But he's not even really doing that, or if he is doing that, he's not really accomplishing that. It's a problem. Then you've got Nitish Rana gets bumped down the order, plays a decent innings under the circumstances, and then you've got Andre Russell again. And we've talked about this loads of times on this podcast. The KKR in Andre Russell have a golden asset. If you look at cricket batting wise, it is very much a strong link sport. It's a bit like basketball. Yeah. If you have Michael Jordan on your side, you're probably going to be a good basketball team because you have Michael Jordan on your side. If you're a cricket batting lineup and you've got and you've got Andre Russell as a player that you can choose to send in whenever you like, you have almost immediately you have a plus batting lineup, and they end up, because of this fucking stupid decision making, and because they send in Owen Morgan, who's not very good. If we're going to be polite, fucking crap. If you want to be, honest, because they're sending him in way above, Andre Russell has to come in, and there's not enough time for him to really do the damage that we think that he could do. He doesn't scare the captain on the other team because he's coming in so late that they've already gone to death mode, and it's like, what will be. He doesn't really add plus value in the middle overs because he's not batting in the middle overs. He comes in after this procession of failure on this occasion, not necessarily for KKR in the second half, but on this occasion, which has been led by Owen Morgan, and he can't do any damage. And there's a big knock-on effect to that. It's bad captaincy, it's bad planning, and it's bad batting from Owen Morgan. So there you go. I think that's what we think about Owen Morgan, unless anyone wants to fucking disagree.
No, well, I'm not going to disagree, but what I will say is a couple of things. One, I've actually written about this in the Substack that I've literally just published before we went on this podcast, danweston.substack.com, and there's another player on it as well who I featured, and we're going to discuss that later, and that's David Warner. So Morgan and Warner is the subject of my latest Substack post, but also let's make this clear, okay? Owen Morgan and Brendan McCullum, they're cut from the same cloth in terms of advocating this attacking intent. Mm-hmm. At some point in time, McCullum is going to have to make a decision whether the captain gets a free pass on that, because at the moment he is not. It's almost like, well, you've all got to do this intent, but it doesn't matter about Morgan. And you can't have that as a leader. You have to have, the leader has to lead from the front. The leader has to set the example, and he's not doing that. And that is a big problem for KKR. It's a big problem for England. And Morgan also said at one point in the past, if he wasn't producing with the bat, he would step aside as England captain. And at this year, he hasn't produced with the bat. Now, this data this year is equivalent to the 2015 to 2017 Owen Morgan, who was, quite frankly, pretty mediocre in terms of boundary hitting and strike rate. Then he had a start of a renaissance around 2018 and peaked around 2019 when he hit over 170 for the calendar year, which is massive. And he hit 23% boundaries and almost 12% sixes. You can't argue with that. That's big money purchase in IPL auction form, which is what happened. But he's now 35. He's now hitting 122 for the strike rate for the year. Below average boundary percentage, his 6% just dropped off. He's getting out more frequently. This is a huge problem. And I don't think England want to address this problem. I don't think he wants to address this problem in advance of the World Cup, from the perception that I have. I think that everyone's going to hope that it's okay. Well, it's about this moment in time. It's about as okay as England picking one specialist spinner on used pitches in the UAE.
It's all right. Benny Howell will be called up just very soon, Dan. Don't you worry. Don't you worry. What I also think is that it's an overseas slot, right? There are better overseas players in that team. And KKR's lineup, anyway, their balance of that side is already off because Morgan is in that side. Dennis Kartik today, who Morgan ousted as captain, played brilliantly. They did exactly what we wanted, did exactly what he needed from him, right?
It was close.
Yeah.
It was brilliant.
Yeah, really, really good.
But that's why you'll have an Indian captain most of the time in the IPL, because there are very few overseas players who justify their place in the team in every single match. Mm-hmm. And that's why having an Indian captain is better. If you have an overseas player, they've got to be like top 5 players in the world. And there's only a few of them. De Villiers, Rashid Khan. There's not many to name. Mm-hmm. And Morgan, unfortunately, for the best will in the world, is not a top 5 world player. And so you're picking a guy as captain who's, you're at the moment, numbers-wise, you're carrying as a passenger.
Yeah. I mean, like you only have to look at the comparison between picking someone like him, say, and Lockie Ferguson, which was a decision they had to make earlier in the tournament, or because they didn't, or Ferguson or Cummins, I guess, was the other one, and they were they were buggered on both fronts because they paid so much money for Cummins, so much, and they'd made Morgan the captain. So these two undroppable overseas players that weren't necessarily the best options for the games they were playing. CSK are good though, aren't they? You know?
Yeah. Well, and let's talk about it, right? Because they had that weird thing again where the game looked like it had just got away from them. Like KKR, 170 runs. Like we're sitting here criticising Morgan. Like the team did well around Morgan. I thought that middle order did really well. Tripathi did well. Rana did well. Russell did okay, and then Dinesh Karthik finished it off. Striking at 230 odd, 240 odd, something like that. Like it was.
If you hit 20 off 14 balls, they win.
Yeah, and unfortunately, they left the door open slightly for them, and I think we can only blame. I can't believe I'm going to say this because I'm an English fan, but it's probably Morgan's captaincy that cost them the game here, right? So we can come back and talk about some of the great performances from some of the CSK players, but Jadeja at the end, when it came to over 19, came to over 20, like they needed quite a few runs there, right? And Jadeja hit 22 off of Lottery Krishna's bowling. Lottery Krishna should not be the guy who is bowling the 19th over here. Like Morgan has misallocated his overs. So you've got kind of Sunil Narine finishing off the final over. Maybe that's okay, maybe that's not okay. But Krishna having to bowl that over when he's not a death bowler. I can't imagine, Dan, I haven't got the stats in front of me, but I can't imagine that Prashad Krishna's stats at the death are particularly flattering.
I'm just checking it now.
Because I think you'd want either someone like Lockie Ferguson bowling that over, or as they're using Andre Russell at the moment, so Andre Russell, their game plan now is to bowl him 3 or 4 overs in this. He might go for 8 and over, might go for 9 and over, but he is your big name player. Do you want to put the pressure on what? Is Krishna 20, 21, something like that? He's a young bowler. He's good, but he's a lottery bowler.
He's 25.
Krishna's not 25.
Yeah, he is, man. Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
I've done the commentary thing. I've gone. That's what I've done. That is what I've done. I genuinely is one of those things where I've been like, oh, this guy's he's just come around. Like I've seen him play a couple of times. Like, wow.
I think you've got a semi good point here, Ross. But I also think if you're gonna pick Prashad Krishna, you have to accept that he is RCB distilled into a player. He's standard deviation to the max, or he's the wise standard deviation to the max. You know, he goes into that final over with figures of what, 3 overs, 21 for 1. You know, if you're throwing the ball to that geezer, just looking at those stats, you're thinking that's a high quality bowler that is not going to cost the game here. Like worst case scenario, he's gonna give Narine a chance in the final over of the match to win it. And then the wheels come completely off. And there are a few factors involved here, aren't there? Like, one, as we mentioned, Prashad Krishna, I don't actually think he really knows where the ball's going to go when he lets go of it. Like, he can bowl quite quickly, and he's able to obviously bowl like a decent disguised slower ball that grips out the pitch and is quite hard to hit. But I don't think he really has much control within reason here for over where that's going to go. I also thought that it was kind of weird, given that Narine didn't necessarily bowl amazingly well, that he was lined up to bowl the final over of the game. And it flashed me back to last summer. Do you remember, Ross? I imagine you do.
Adil Rashid?
Adil Rashid, yeah. And it was like, I thought it was an interesting one that you'd give Narine the final over, or the two of them would be the final 2 bowlers that you'd go with, and not Andre Russell, who's, you look at his figures, they're not stunning, but has way more experience at the death than either of those two. And has been bowling pretty well at the death, like in terms of where the ball's been ending up. Lockie Ferguson, not used in that role. It was kind of weird as well. They go for like 1 over of Venki Iyer. It works out quite well, goes for 5 runs, and then he's like, no, I'm not going to go back to that. I mean, like, if I were in his shoes, obviously as the esteemed captain of I Don't Like Cricket Club, who had their best season in history, and obviously I led them to many wins this year. I don't know how I'd have handled that bowling lineup. I think if we're talking about like the question about who should bowl where, for this team. I'm not sure there's great role definition for any of those players. I think possibly beyond that, I'm not really sure that any of them particularly suit the role definition that you'd want. So if we flip back to last year's Mumbai Indians, for example, you've got Trent Boult up front, you've got Bumrah at the death, you've got you got Chahar bowling the middle overs and making things difficult. You've got Crew now as your matchup buster to some extent.
Nathan Coulter-Nile in to make it a little bit more difficult for you.
Even Coulter-Nile, you know where he's going to bowl. You know sort of what he's going to do. I'm looking at Prasith Krishna. I have no doubt that there's talent there. He feels to me a little bit like Mohammad Siraj from 2 years ago, 3 years ago. Like what's his actual job here? He's opening the bowling today. He didn't open the bowling last week. He wasn't a power play bowler in their last match. He was bowling middle overs. 2 of them went for 15 plus, and 2 of them went for 5. It's like what is Prasith Krishna? Like what's his role there? Lockie Ferguson. Now, in my mind, I'm sort of thinking he's probably best utilised as a death bowler. Didn't bowl one of the 2 critical overs of the game. Is that because he can't do it, or is that because of bad planning? Chakravarti, probably, the only one who's had clear role definition in this whole tournament. Yeah. And it's like a couple of power play overs, couple of middle overs, nails them all. Beautiful bowler, brilliant bowler. Well, I think maybe the best Indian spinner in T20 cricket. Yeah. Sonal Narayan. I mean, like, what was going on with him today? Why was he bowling the last over of the match? I mean, like, it's either KKR don't know what the role definition is, or these players don't fit easily into those categories and they've recruited badly. It is a really long way, or is a really short way of saying what I've been talking about for the last, 4 minutes or something.
Yeah. As a recruiter for teams, I've got some quite strong views on this, and largely, by and large, they're pretty much in line with what Jack, you just said. So on a semi-jovial note to start with, I just wonder if Nathan Lemon held up the wrong sign. And that was what happened. or whether, in all seriousness, okay, let's look at the KKR pacers, right? 3 main pacers: Prasith Krishna, Lockie Ferguson, Andre Russell. Now, until he really played for Yorkshire this summer, Lockie Ferguson didn't really bowl a lot of the death at all. Now, because they needed him to bowl at the death, they used to do more at the death. Primarily before, when he's played, he's been more a power play bowler and then middle overs enforcer. Not bowl a high percentage of his overs at the death at all. Mm-hmm. Prasith Krishna, in the last 2 years in the IPL, goes at 10.7 and over at the death. Not good. Andre Russell, in the last 2 seasons of the IPL, goes for almost 11 at the death. Not good at all. Now, essentially, what KKR have done, as a recruiter, what you have to do is you have to find players who can fit key roles into your team. Mm-hmm. So you can't pick a squad of like the best players, because the best players don't fit into a coherent starting 11 with clear role definition. And having a death bowling choice of Prasith Krishna, Lockie Ferguson and Andre Russell shows that you've gone into a match, or you've come out of an auction with no thoughts about your death bowling.
Yeah. It's just frustrating, right, for KKR fans, especially when they've got the team in the CPL as well. These guys are supposed to know what they're trying to do here. And they're making a business out of this, and it's just some poor decisions. In the chat, it's highlighted that Mayank has highlighted that Venki is not a regular bowler. You can't possibly bowl him over Krishna.
He bowled a lot in the side Mr. Galley.
Yeah,
and then people also shouting that Russell was injured. Like, regardless, what we're saying,
he's only bowled 3 overs in every single one of their games in the second half. I think that was the plan. Yeah. He might have an injury now. He might have an injury halfway through the last over. I don't think they were ever planning to bowl him 4 overs.
And that's what I thought you were saying, Jack, was around actually their approach and their strategy didn't actually fit.
And even if they were, Dan's just said he goes for 11 and over at the death. So why was that the plan anyway?
Yeah.
Anyway, look, we've criticised KKR, I think, almost enough. Let's talk about how CSK... Actually, there was one thing written down here. Nick Knight on commentary said that Narayan is capable of magic. He is a magician. No, Nick, he just chucks it. Anyway, let's talk about CSK. So Gaikwad, the man who's 25, not 20, he's brilliant to watch. He's absolutely brilliant. And there is a bit. Dan, we talked about his strike rate before. This turn of IPL, he's hit it straight out of the middle. This guy looks brilliant, and that opening lineup. I mean, that opening three is actually great for CSK, right? You've got Faf, who I cannot believe he's not in the South Africa World Cup squad. That is just a disgrace, regardless of whatever the politics is around it. I think he should be there. And then Moeen Ali at 3. I think it's a nice little threesome at the top, isn't it?
Oui.
Yeah. So the one thing I would say about the CSK openers is that no one's really got at them via spin, opening the bowling with spin. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a weakness. I think that they're both excellent players. Obviously, Gaikwad has so impressed me compared to last year, no doubt about that. But I think they've got a Kohli-esque slowdown against spin in the middle overs against in their locker. Mm-hmm. So if those two are in, and you don't have Moeen Ali, who's like probably the best spin hitter in the world, he's still sitting in the dugout at that point, then that's potentially an issue. So they have to go hard at the start, and they really, they did today. There was 74 odd after 8 overs when Gaikwad was out. But yeah, good top 3, and it's just so interesting and so good to see like this CSK team who obviously, put it kindly, experienced, so adopt this new mantra of being kind of like intent merchants, if you like. And I think obviously Dhoni's probably kind of pushed that on them after last year before they can do a bit of surgery at the mega auction. Yeah. But actually they're quite a fun team to watch when they're away from Chapok.
I mean, Chapok's a problem, isn't it? I mean, like I really don't like it as a cricket stadium. But I do think this season in the IPL they've been one of the best teams to watch. I've really, really enjoyed watching CSK, and I'm a diehard Mumbai Indians fan, and I should not admit to crossing the El Clasico divide. But they've been phenomenal, and bearing in mind what happened last year, where phenomenal was the last word you'd use to describe them. It's been a real breath of fresh air. Mm-hmm. And I think they've used the players that they've brought in really effectively. And I think that, like, I don't know if it's reorientation or whatever it is, whoever's in charge of making the players play like they are has done an absolutely fantastic job. I mean, I would assume it's a combination of Dhoni and Fleming. I've heard that when overseas players turn up at CSK, quite often they're told right at the beginning of the season that your job for CSK will be this. So I guess for Faf to see, it's going to be, you're going to open the batting in all 14 matches, and we expect you to score this amount of runs at this strike rate. For Sam Curran, it's probably more like, you're going to play 7 matches, you're going to bat in the top 3 twice. When we have this matchup that we think you'll be able to exploit, you're going to bowl these overs at these times. Apparently, they have a very detailed plan, is what I'm saying, about how they're going to use players and in what circumstances they should expect to bowl and what circumstances they should expect to bat. And they just sound like a very methodical, well thought out body. I think it's a bit of a shame as well that we're maybe watching the end of MS Dhoni's career here, and like his bat can't really support
the brain.
Definitely.
Right. You're talking about them. They have a playbook, right? The CSK have a playbook. They've managed to win titles around it. They play some good cricket, and actually, the way in which MS Dhoni use spinners is far beyond of how some of the other teams actually use spinners, and they use it to great effect. What I do think at the moment is MS Dhoni should drop himself as low down the order as he possibly can do. Like Sam Curran and Jadeja are probably better. So they're probably better off sending them in over him, but that's probably not going to happen, is it? So
no, I mean, like, maybe he wants like one more. If he gets 50 off 20 in one of the last games, maybe they just go for the retention one more time.
Mate, no, it's written in the stars that it's going to be a Mahindra Singh Dhoni like 57 off of 24 balls in the final. That's what it's going to be.
We were joking on the last pod, but me and Dan did together, that Mo and not Mo, MS Dhoni's watching the Ryder Cup and thinking, I wish I could have Padre Harrington's job, the non-playing captain, like do all the tactics, but not actually, have to play the shots.
As in, like,
maybe
be like mentor or whatever, and actually be a mentor that actually does something.
I can well believe the way T20 cricket is going, and this is a bit of a diversion, that it will become more like the NFL in terms of having off-field coaches that are calling the shots, calling the plays, calling the next delivery, calling the field placings, stuff like that. It won't be for every league, but for leagues like the IPL, where the advertisers effectively don't care how long the game goes on for because people will be watching it. Then there's definitely a role for a bowling coordinator or a spin bowling coordinator or whatever it is that you get in the NFL.
Well, I look forward to that. There are 408 people currently watching this, which is great. So thank you ever so much, because we realise it's relatively late for everybody. But you should hit that like button and subscribe to it. And there is all kinds of drama going on in the live chat about match fixing. So this is just brilliant to watch. So let's move on, because I think
I've seen this. Yeah, no. Look, Mayank's making some really good points. Like maybe it is WWE wrestling.
Yeah, what I like is that Barrett, Rana, Dhoni, Iyer, they're all strategically placed in the middle order of the IPL teams to match fix. I think that kind of stuff that's what you don't hear on other podcasts, and that's the stuff that needs to be raised far and wide.
Dan can't talk about betting because he actually works in cricket. But
so that's good. Anyway, let's move on. So we go from the playbook on the Sunday to play group on the Saturday. Which games?
I don't know. Let's start with the last one. Just before we get into that, though, you said there were 400 odd people watching. Like and subscribe to these videos, because we do this exact show quite regularly, like a lot of times a week. It's not the weekend special like it is now, but someone's going to get it on Monday or Tuesday, whenever the next show is. Could be Owen Morgan. It could be a Rajasthan Royals, Sunrisers Hyderabad. That's a tasty fixture tomorrow, isn't it? But yesterday. Let's start with the second game yesterday. Punjab Kings of Comedy v the Sunrisers Hyderabad. Punjab, they bat first. And you know what? They batted so well to get 125 runs at Sharjah. There's many excuses floating around the internet. Apparently, they've relayed the strip at Sharjah. I don't know if you knew this, boys. And it's made it a lot harder to bat. Apparently, it takes a whole year to bed down a new cricket square or whatever. 125/7 then obviously represents, magical batting, until you factor in that you basically have to hit the ball to about where the back of the room is there to get a six. 125/7. It's an absolute shocker of a first inning score. There's no other way to describe this. KL Rahul, 21/21. Ball eating in fine form. Aidan Markram, 27/32. I bet he's proud of himself. His mum probably rang him up and said, "Well done, son." Harpreet Brar, 18/18. Shahrukh Khan's completely disappeared from this team. He was quite exciting. So I guess that's why they ditched him. In response, 126 to win. Sunrisers Hyderabad, they needed one person in the top order not even that. They needed 5 people in the top order to just be like, let's hit a bunch of sixes and win this as soon as possible. Instead, I'm just going to read out their strike rate so we can get into this in a bit more detail. And I think this could be up there with the most tragic top order performance in the history of the IPL. 66.67, 83.78, 16.67, 56.52, 100. Kedar Jadhav, let's just call him out here. He strikes at 100. Well batted, Kedar. Abdul Samad, 50. And then eventually it gets down to the bottom of the fucking innings, and somebody's like, I'm going to do something about this tragedy that's unfolding in front of my eyes. And Jason Holder, 47/29, no fours, 5 sixes. The only person in the entire game, apparently, who read the scouting report about the fucking stadium they were playing in. 162.07 his strike rate. Ross, I'll start with you, and Dan, I'm sure you've got thoughts on this. Why did both of these teams completely fucking forget that they were playing on in your back garden?
Dan, I'll happily throw this over to you because I've got quite a few notes here which I just kind of rip into them. Jack, you've done
I think we've got 408 listeners left. By the time we finish with this match, there'll be 4 left because we'll be about 10 o'clock at night our time, I think. Because 200? We sat through 240 balls. I sat through to watch this match with 17 boundaries in 240 balls. Like Sunrisers hit 7 boundaries in their whole innings, and 5 of them were from Jason Holder.
They needed what? They needed pretty much one a ball from the outset, and somehow managed to get it to a point where they needed 10 and over.
Yeah,
it was so early as well. It was like 8 overs to go, and they needed 10 and over, and they nearly did it.
There were 60 for 5 off 13 overs. I've seen Test teams come out of the blocks quicker than that. Oh my God, it was horrible. It was such a bad watch. And I mean, I've got to this point now where Sunrisers are so bad that actually they're living rent-free in my head because I can't cope. I can't cope with watching them, honestly.
You're waking up in cold sweats. You're just like, I'm not Tom Moody.
Lads, I genuinely had to go for a walk. I was watching Punjab bat, and I was like, I can't do this for 4 hours. I have to go out. Yeah. I came back for the finale. And I came back when Jason Holder was coming out to bat, and I'd been following the game on my phone and stuff. And I was like, how? The first thing I thought was like, obviously this pitch is a cow stadium. We're playing at Ahmedabad back in March, and nobody, anybody that can spin the ball is causing all sorts of mayhem. And I was watching it, and I was like, yeah, it is turning a little bit. It's not. It's. You're still playing at Sharjah. I couldn't. I just can't get in the headspace to really explain this.
It's got a 55-metre straight boundary.
Yeah, right.
Yes.
This is the bit where my notes start to kick in. So,
good.
Punjab Kings.
Somebody's got notes.
Punjab Kings, right? Their top order is a joke, right? How they KL Rahul is actually having a half decent IPL at the moment. His strike rate's okay. This game he uses 21 balls of the power play for 21 runs. I mean that is ball eater 101. They've got Chris Gale coming in at 3. Chris Gale at Sharjah is like a cheat code. It is literally like you go onto a game and you just say, oh, I've got the best bloke ever at hitting sixes who can still do it. And they're just like, do you know what, actually, let's hide him down 1. And let's play Mayank Agarwal at number 2. It just doesn't really make sense to me. And then they've got a worse version of David Milan at 4. I'm not really sure what they're trying to achieve with that top 4. And my view on that is the intent, Dan, that you always talk about. If Finn Allen was in this side, you'd be like, oh, I love Punjab because you love Finn Allen. But there's no one there in that side at the moment who's doing that. And surely give Chris Gale the Kings of the Kingdom to try and do that for you here.
Well, the thing with Chris Gale is I will back Punjab Kings on this, actually. Oh, okay. He's much more effective against spin these days than he is against pace. So putting him at 3 actually does make quite a bit of sense. But I completely agree with you of the worst version of Milan at 4, no doubt about that. That was just weird. In a world where you can recruit like Inglis or Alex Hales or Ramanullah Gabars or someone like that, why don't you recruit Markram?
Yeah, it does make Hales. Just recruit Hales. All you needed to do was pick Alex Hales, and that's all you needed to do. But even then, right?
I just can't believe this. I'm looking at the scoreboard now. I'm like, how have you only managed to score 125 batting first at Sharjah?
Yeah,
I know it's difficult to bat.
Win.
How have you not chased that? These are two of the most incompetent cricket teams in. Well, I mean, in the world. You're looking through this. Every single one of these players has failed.
My view here. My view is. Yeah, apart from Jason Holder. But Dan, even your point here around Chris Gale better at spin against pace, completely take that. But in this Sunrisers Hyderabad lineup, they don't have any out-and-out pacers, right? Bhuvi is probably their fastest bowler. Or Jason Holder, their fastest, and they're all actually
Jason Holder, their fastest bowler.
And you kind of see they go that to me for Chris Gale that should be bread and butter stuff. But I take your point, and I'll rather sit down where the data backs it up. But this team, just for me, I just don't see how they're trying to put it together. They're trying to use...
Which team? Sorry, you need to be more specific on this occasion. Who are you talking about?
Punjab first, right? They should not have won this game, first and foremost. But the pressure that Glenn Maxwell was under when he played for them last IPL is the same pressure that Pooran's now being put under. And they've got 2 Ferraris there in the middle order, and they're not giving them the best conditions to actually play like they should be playing.
Yeah, but the thing is, Ross, you're not. Cheers, Vic, in the super chat for giving us some money. What you're not factoring in though, Ross, is that KL has to bat like this because he can't trust Nicholas Pooran or Gale or Markram or Deepak. He can't trust anyone below him. Can't trust Agarwal. He has to bat like he's rubbish at cricket. He's actually amazing, but he has to bat like he's rubbish. This is the thing we never discuss on this show. Like he's actually God. We didn't talk about God Shardul Thakur earlier, by the way, but
he transcends our conversation though. He's that good.
But yeah, no. So 21 off 21. The only reason he did that, literally the only reason, is because he had to. He'd love to have scored 100 off 21. And he could have done it, but he had to bat like this. Yeah.
Dan, let's talk about Sunrisers, because Sunrisers are a joke, aren't they? Let's start with David Warner, because he's the biggest joke of them all. His decline has been staggering. Like you were talking earlier about kind of how people come in, like pad a cow, and then dip a little bit and go again. Warner was like this, and he's just fallen off the face of the earth, isn't he?
Yeah. So, as I said earlier, I've written about Warner, I've written about Morgan on my latest Substack, danwestern.substack.com. Like and subscribe, of course. And is David Warner, okay, so look at his data. I've gone through, on that Substack, I've gone through a complete run-through of his data over the last 7 years, right? Now, 2015, 2016, this was peak Warner. He was averaging between 26 and 30 balls per dismissal, which is like anchor territory, but he's hitting over 150, which is just unbelievable. You just don't see players do that. You're hitting over 20% boundaries, and you're playing a considerable proportion of your team's innings whilst doing so, which is it's unbelievably good. This is a player like that you don't see very often. A player like that you spend 10 plus crore on at auction. But this guy, at that point in time in his career, he had it all. Like, there was absolutely no argument to that at all. Now, we all know what happened to David Warner in 2018. And since then, his boundary percentage hasn't been over 17% for a calendar year. So he's gone from being a guy who just brutalised attacks to a guy who is a mediocre boundary hitter. In 2019 and 2020, his dot ball percentage was super low at just over 30%. So he's become a dot ball avoider. Now the problem is this year, he's not a boundary hitter, and he's facing 44% dots, which is why he's striking at less than 110. Now he's still facing a lot of balls, 22 on average this year. But that's a massive problem. Actually, when you're facing 22 balls and you're striking at 107-ish, that's not good for your team, because it means that everyone else has to hit really, really high to hit any good scores. And it's also compounded by the fact that Manish Pandey this year is also facing a load of balls at a low strike rate too. So the person who's in charge of this team, who puts Warner and Manish Pandey and Kedar Yadav all in the same team, is like, it just blows my mind. Like I said, they're living rent-free in my head right now, because
there's actually there's a really good comment about this.
I'm so angry that there's people on massive salaries running this team, and they're like this. They're a shambles. Like you said the other day when you were on the pub with Max, they should be relegated.
They should be. I'm sick of them. Patrick Agarwal, Dan, says Sunrisers Hyderabad are a social experiment to see how annoyed Dan Weston can get. Which is, they are. I mean, like on the last podcast,
or nothing like that. It's just so frustrating that, like, all I want is for someone associated with that team to stand up after a game and say, "Do you know what? We screwed up with our planning." If the teams that I work for, if we were crap, I wouldn't have any social media presence to start with because I'd be so embarrassed. But this doesn't seem to happen with teams. Like people like represent bad teams and then they're still doing commentary or social appearances or you name it, they're doing it. Okay, I'd be so embarrassed. I'd be actually devastated if this happened. And not just that, I would be accountable. I would want to be accountable. I like having accountability. So the teams I work for, everything that I do is documented in reports and it's all on emails and files and reports. So that if it goes wrong, we can say, okay, well, that's the decision that we took with the best of our knowledge at that point in time. And at that point in time, it was a rational decision. It may not have worked out, but that's okay because nothing ever worked out. There's not always a guarantee. But I would be like, I would get in front of a TV camera and I would say, look, we tried this, it didn't work. This is the reason why. That's fine. I'm accountable for the failure, and that's all good with me. The buck stops here. You don't see it. I haven't seen it at all. I haven't seen anyone from Sunrisers Hyderabad own this failure that's happened this season.
At risk of retreading old ground, can we just go back through the top order and say how bad this batting was? Because I do, unless somebody can point out a more tragic performance than this. You're chasing 125, yeah?
RCB had one first game, I think it was 2018 or 2019, when they got rolled for like about 60 all out by.
But they were batting first.
Yeah.
They weren't chasing like a peanut score.
Yeah.
It was they at least had to, like, when they were 5 down, they still had to keep going because they knew 140 was par.
Yeah.
In this game, the whole way through the innings, these people knew what the target was and still fucked up. David Warner, 2 from 3. Ridham Sahar, 31 from 37. I mean, that is so bad. And he's run out. Doesn't even have the courtesy.
Because he's so old.
It doesn't even have the courtesy of being caught on the fucking boundary. Like, at least get out of it. He's hit one boundary. I've just seen this. He's faced 37 balls and hit one boundary at Sharjah.
He's too big, mate. It's too big. The ground is too big.
Kane Williamson, one off 6. Manish Pandey, 13 of 23. Also one boundary. Well batted, mate.
Manish Pandey faced half the innings between them and hit 2 boundaries now, both fours.
And they managed to effect a run out as well. The one other thing they could have done to save the team, maybe they could have run loads of 2s. Probably not at Sharjah because it's about as big as the table that I'm doing this podcast on. But maybe they could have at least run a few 2s to keep the strike rate up. Nope, didn't bother. Kedar Jadhav, 12 off 12.
I put something up on Twitter yesterday that said I immediately had to apologise on behalf of Sunrisers because they'd unfortunately picked up Kedar Yadav in this game again and decided that he was a better option. That you might as well pick someone up off the street and put them in this team than play Kedar Yadav.
Can we just say though, look, Jason Holder, 47 off 29, 5 sixes, well batted, really well batted. The only player in the entire game that realised what the actual conundrum was.
How many times does it happen that a losing player was man of the match? Like it should happen more, but it hardly ever happens. And the fact that he it really does tell you his contribution.
Yeah. Ross, should we whistle through the final game? Because this has been a pretty long podcast.
Well,
it's been super... Go, yeah.
One thing, unless, Dan, the note I had around your bit where people take a bit of accountability, I've said if I owned the Sunrisers Hyderabad franchise, I would rip it all up and start again.
You have to. And the mega auction can't come quick enough. But I saw a video with Carlos Brathwaite and Sanjay Manjrekar on Quick Info earlier. And the Carlos Brathwaite said that they didn't need an overhaul at the mega auction. And on paper, they're a good team. And I'm thinking, oh my God.
Yeah, I mean, like, Carlos Brathwaite isn't known across the cricketing world as one of the mega minds behind the strategy of T20 cricket.
Well, this is why you don't let your players in recruitment for a start.
Looking at this, you might as well keep going. Who do they even keep? Abdul Samad, not terrible. Rashid Khan, not terrible. Boovi, maybe you'll get a good year out of him.
Value for money.
You could buy him back though, surely.
Probably it'll cost you more, probably. Sandeep Sharma's a decent enough power play bowler. Natarajan, maybe.
Well, I think it's time for them to play Jason Roy. That's all we know. Drop David Warner, play Jason Roy. You might as well have a laugh.
Warm England up for the World Cup. Just get all the English players in.
Warner again. Sorry, it's going over old ground, but it was almost like they forgot that he was dropped for the last game before the tournament finished. Do you know what I mean?
We've got a great question in here, actually, from on Super Chat from Adash Desai. Should Chris Gale stick to Tinder, Ross?
I'm not actually sure that Tinder actually works in the UAE, but maybe that's what we should do.
If it works, I reckon he's on it. I think probably no. I reckon he can do both.
Well, we've got good friend of the show though has come in, Vic London. That Sanjay Manjrekar is known as one of the Dumbos of all in India. So we'll stick to that. Let's move away because otherwise, Dan, I think we could go all night as you said around this Sunrisers team. Absolute dumpster fire of a team. Let's rip it up and start again. Let's go to Delhi, who beat Rajasthan Royals. Rajasthan Royals took the very, very strange approach of winning a game and then deciding we don't like winning, we're going to change our approach completely. And it's a rare thing you see when a team completely does that, right?
It is, yeah.
Yeah, Evan Lewis was injured. Yeah, it's brave.
It's brave. It's like what Ferguson did, wasn't it? He was well known for ripping up the scripts and starting again. The way he did it, though, was not in between matches. Like, he waited usually until at least the end of the season before he was like, get rid of David Beckham or whatever.
Yep, stab.
Yeah, they've taken it to an extreme. Were they right? No.
Let's do it. Like, regardless if Evan Lewis was injured, fine, but you don't bring David Miller in and then completely change your lineup. Like, Dan, you work with Liam Livingstone at Birmingham Phoenix. The guy is a bit of a freak, and I mean, he's clearly the purple patch player at this point in time. But there is not a thing to do. Like, when you've got this purple patch player, is to keep on moving him around, right? There's no point of you can bat at 4, you can open the batting, you can bat at 7.
It's like the England Test team.
Yeah, it's mad. It's a terrible approach to get the most out of a gun, right?
Let's just explain just really quickly what happened in case people. Delhi scored 154 off 20 overs, which didn't seem like enough, and Rajasthan Royals. They managed 121 for 6. Both of them didn't really lose enough wickets to justify how poorly they scored. And again, it's another one of those games where you kind of watch Delhi and you're like, are they actually good or are they just playing some really bad teams?
Yeah.
But that's what happened. Ross, go back to your point. The Liam Livingstone thing is really weird. Why was he opening the batting? Who fucking knows? Explain it.
Yeah, well, the fact that they got Glenn Phillips in that 11 as well, that they're in the squad rather. Why pick David Miller? I just don't understand that. They shouldn't have retained him in the first place. This is a guy who's still dining out on performances from 2015. The guy hasn't struck at over 130 in 6 years. Why is he still getting a game? He might be the nicest bloke in the world. Still should be nowhere near this Rajasthan Royals
Why
team.
does he get a contract?
Yeah. Just cancel it. Just send him home. Give him a first-class flight and send him home.
I'm pretty sure last year he got retained after playing one match where he got run out without facing a ball.
Correct. Yeah, that is correct. Yeah. So it just makes that Rajasthan are obviously the team that I was bequeathed with. They are frustrating, and it again highlights the issues they've got in terms of their poor amount of domestic talent depth. Samson's captaincy is a work in progress. I mean, if him or Sangakkara are making these selection decisions, I mean, continuing to drop like the most expensive player all time, probably not the best kind of approach. I reckon Chris Morris is probably a good addition into this side.
I reckon he wasn't fit.
He was quite sweaty after the first game.
He looked in a bad way after bowling 4 overs the other day.
Do you reckon it? Well, okay.
Lucky to have a few cheeseburgers
as well. So I'm guessing there was a fitness issue there.
Fine. So let's maybe one too many expensive cheeseburgers. Fine. There is a bit there where Tyagi was going around the park where it was clearly a bit of a slower bowling pitch. Why does Liam Livingstone not bowl in this side? Like, the guy he's got some pretty serviceable spin for a couple of overs, right? And then I think it was Lahore.
It's the banter era of the IPL. It's not over. You know,
what does that mean?
This is what we're in. It means that like 60% of the teams is set up to just create comedy.
Well, the other day they told Rian Parag ahead of Livingston as well.
Rian Parag. I literally got down here. So I asked 2 seasons ago, what is a Marcus Stoinis? And we found out what a Marcus Stoinis was. What is a Rian Parag? Because he's not an all-rounder. He can't he's not a batsman. He's not a bowler. He's just there. He's like the Doob. He's filled Shivam Dube's place in this team. Like, I can't explain why he's there, Dan. Why does he bat ahead of what? Yeah, why is he there? Do you know why?
Well, he's 19, so it's extremely dangerous to write off a 19-year-old who made his debut when he was 17.
Yep, fine.
However, and he has done all right at side Mushtaq Ali level. I'll give him that. But at the IPL right now, I don't think he's ready for it. He averages 18 with the bat and 72 with the ball. Strike rate of 123 with the bat, and an economy of almost 10 with the ball. I mean,
he's got a nice round arm though.
Yeah, if that's me, I mean, like I said this about guys like someone like Zach Crawley, who's wasn't ready, in my opinion, to play for the Test team for England. These guys should just play at a lower level until they are ready. I never get why. He's a good player, got good potential, but he's still like a work in progress at side Mushtaq level or the county championship or whatever. Let's pick him in the England Test team or the IPL. You know, like, well, how about you wait until they actually do something in those leagues that suggests that they've got immediate upside?
Well, Babu Rao has suggested that Parag is only in the team for his social media engagement, so that could well be one of their approaches. The Fizz, Dan, he's undroppable in this team now.
So good.
Like, he's great, isn't he? Like, he's great to watch. Like, clearly, he's a... You know when someone just owns their craft and you can kind of tell that the guy just knows what he's doing, and it's just quite a nice thing to be able to watch when quite a lot of the other players don't seem to have that ability.
He went through that dip as well and then came back out the other side that we were talking about.
I'm going to throw out a Jack prediction here. I think he will go really cheap at the next IPL mega auction. I think he'll be super undervalued because he's from Bangladesh, because what he does is a bit weird. He'll end up at... I reckon because he looks a bit weird, because he's from Bangladesh, because it doesn't quite make sense in cricket people's heads. He will end up at like one of the new teams, and he'll be phenomenal for one of those new teams.
I've got a theory about that as well, right? So, have you watched Cricket Fever?
Is this the Mumbai Indians doc?
Yeah, on Netflix, right? So, there's 2 players in it, okay, and I want to talk about a little bit here in terms of the knock-on effects I think that has happened since that documentary. Now,
Mitchell McClenaghan's hot. Is that what you're going to talk about?
No. Mustafiza is like, he comes across as like he can't speak English very well, and there's communication issues and stuff like that. And I think that probably and now everyone in the cricket world knows that Mustafiza doesn't speak English very well now. Okay, I can tell you that right now for nothing. Okay, so that puts people off recruiting someone for that reason. Now, if you remember, also Evan Lewis came across as like I think there was maybe some discussion about him not play, or he should have played when he was injured and stuff like that. And I think this guy is a very, very, very good batter. No matter what metrics you use, Evan Lewis is probably a top 20 in the world T20 batter. Yeah, he's gone unsold at auctions and stuff before. So I think that this documentary actually might even have had some negative knock-on effects of Fizz and Evan Lewis.
Possible. Yeah, it's definitely possible, because you need to manufacture drama from somewhere, don't you?
Yeah.
What better place to do it? Ross, how much more have we got to talk about? We've got one question in from Patreon.
Yeah, we got 2. Let's just talk about Delhi, because we talked about everyone else bar Delhi. Shreyas Iyer, they are quite good. Shreyas Iyer is back in this side, and he is an upgrade on Steve Smith. However, the fact that Shreyas Iyer comes back into this team for Steve Smith means that they get an overseas spot back. What, Dan? How would you describe it when an IPL team, which has 4 overseas slots, only uses or doesn't use the 4? Is that poor planning? Is that poor recruitment? Is it poor selection? Like, is it arrogance? What is it?
Well, I tweeted about this yesterday. It's all of the above. Well, not about arrogance, but definitely poor recruitment and poor selection.
Yeah, well, I found it baffling, but what I did like was Shimron Hetmeyer with his new blue. His blue top. Like, he he doesn't strike me. I'd rather have Evan Lewis in my team. If I was picking a kind of a West Indian cricketer, I'd rather go Evan Lewis over Shimron Hetmyer. Hetmyer, to me, is always one of those people who's kind of flattered to deceive, really. But when he got 28 runs yesterday, he faced 5 full tosses, and CricViz put a tweet up with the stats kind of backing up that pretty much told the story of don't bowl full tosses to Hetmyer. He's never been out and averages loads. You'd bloody hope so for a middle order hitter. He's getting a free ball to smash around the park. And CricViz...
You want to bowl full tosses to AB de Villiers. He's terrible against them.
That's one of the things that I have as an issue with like various data companies is that like someone might put out a tweet that says like, "Oh, Shimron Hetmyer averages 200 against full tosses."
Yeah.
But then what they don't say is, "Oh, what the average batter strikes at against full tosses," which might be 250. so like it makes 200 actually really as not that good, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a bit strange. I think the only other thing to mention around Delhi, because again they're top, they are playing like good enough cricket, right? They've got a really good bowling unit at the moment. It seems like Ashwin might not be considered one of the best T20 bowlers in the world, but actually it's working at the moment. Akshar and him work quite well together. Avesh Khan's kind of going a little bit under the radar here. I think he's having a good tournament, Avesh Khan, and then because he's in the shadow of Nortje and Rabada. And that out-and-out pace from Nortje is causing all kinds of problems. So they're a pretty formidable lineup at the moment, and they're just quite consistent, Jack, aren't they, really?
Yeah, they're a good team. I mean, one of the things we speculated on is what would happen with Delhi when their openers didn't score 60% of their runs. Didn't happen in this game. Still won pretty easily. They're quite a good T20 team. Will they win the IPL? I still don't think they will. I think that they have weaknesses, and I think that there are better teams than them.
Well, let's wrap this up then. Jack, you said we had a question from Patreon.
Yeah. Well, we've got one from the super chat first of all. Some Adarsh Desai says, "Who will be the next RCB captain?" Ross, throw out your opinion here first.
I genuinely have no. First of all, it surely will be an Indian player. I'm not sure if they've got like a local Bangalore kind of boy who
Bangalorean?
Bangalorean? I don't know. That's a good thing to be called though. Where I'm a Bangalorean. That is a good thing to say. So I don't know, but I think in the IPL and things like that, you should be going for people who are in the Indian team and probably in that. So I don't know. People
Devdutt Padikkal. I'd go big.
Padikkal.
Give him as much pressure as possible. That's the RCB way. Dan, your next RCB. Your next RCB captain.
Oh,
I don't know, and I don't care.
Fair enough.
Because captains just don't make much influence on matches. It's like what did we talk about the other day about someone said he said in the podcast with Max, Manish Pandey. Someone said that he should be the new RCB captain, which is bonkers. No, don't really care, to be honest with you. I do want to make one more point about the Rajasthan-Delhi match, though, if that's okay.
Yeah.
I want to say, were Rajasthan playing for net run rate? Because their chase was pathetic. Like, it was as bad as Sunrise.
We probably should have mentioned this a bit more. It was weird, wasn't it?
Well, they just
Samson hit 70 or 53, but that's massively flattering because he was like a runner ball for ages.
Yeah, he was just like, I've got a red inker here. I know there's an auction coming up. I'm going to be all right. Yeah, will he get retained? Will he not get retained? He is the captain. Don't know.
He'll probably be retained.
But I
would guess.
It was fun.
You never know with them.
Yeah,
Rahul Tewatia. Retain him.
Miller, Lomraw, Das, Rimparag and Tewatia scored a grand total of 37 runs from 56 balls.
Mm.
That's good. I mean, like, let's be honest, the three of us wouldn't do that in the IPL. And that's how we should judge these things. They're my favourite comments, by the way. People are like, what do you know about the IPL? You never played it.
Yeah.
Over on Patreon, I've got a pizza that's just arrived, so we're going to be quick here. Girish says, should we do away with T20 bilateral series? This is a bit off topic, completely, as Shastri has recommended. I see the merit in that argument, given the amount of cricket being played, if we make the World T20 Cup every 2 years and have a championship of franchises across the various different leagues, would it work? I do think there's a problem with players playing for multiple franchises. But other than that, what do you think? So that's quite a good question. Should T20, I guess, Ross, just be club or franchise only?
And I always like football wise, my favourite time isn't watching the UEFA Champions League. It isn't watching Europa League, normally because Spurs aren't in it. But the World Cup and the Euros are fantastic to watch, right? So I actually like if that romanticism of it comes back is in there. Fine.
But imagine if England just had to play Spain 4 times, and that was the football season. I think there's a lot to be said in T20 and ODI cricket for playing World Cups and very limited other international fixtures.
Or franchise leagues.
So he said IPL, BBL, CPL, the 100. With I guess a Champions League of the best 1 or 2. I think that'd be interesting. I think that will come back. I don't know what they'll do about the players in different leagues thing. But I do think that because there was a Champions League, wasn't there, for a while, and then it went away. That may or may not have had something to do with Alan Stanford.
Yeah, but that was really weird because I think all the IPL teams got to play more overseas players as well, so it's really unfair.
Oh, did they actually?
Yeah.
Didn't Middlesex win it one year or something completely bizarre like that?
Leicester win it one year because Nico was telling me about it before.
Yeah. All right. Well,
I'd like that. Let's wrap up the show. There's a couple of quick questions on Twitter. Sorry if we didn't get to them. I will quickly read out the people's names though. So Vijay, Vignesh, Vikrant, Rikun, Ganesh, Aditya, and Radshish. I think we answered most of the questions. There were a couple of slightly off-topic ones. Thanks for messaging us. Ross, we're going to wrap up now.
Yeah. Thanks very much for watching. We are sponsored by Woodstock Cricket. Use code TCP25 if you want 25% off. And follow us at The Cricket Pod on Twitter and Instagram. Like and subscribe to this video and our channel. Dan, where can they find you?
On Twitter at SA Advantage and on Substack. If you want to read about why Morgan and Warner aren't very good this year, that's danweston.substack.com. Like and subscribe.
Yeah, that was a big boy podcast, Lance. Well done. Patreon.com/The Cricket Pod. Last message.
Dan,
wrap it up, Ross. Do you know how to end this?
Yeah, Dan, thank you ever so much for watching and being part of it. I'm going to end it now. Bye, everybody.